An issue we talked about at the tail end of last year's legislative session is the issue with what's called SVPs, sexually violent predators. So in Washington state, we throw them on an island, which I think is great. I know Democrats want to shut the island down, but gosh, I wish everybody had an island to put the sex offenders on. So not all sex offenders go to McNeil Island. It's the worst of the worst. It's people who have been deemed irredeemable, people who serve their time in prison and then they're deemed to be at a high likelihood of reoffending. So you toss them on an island for a civil commitment. Love it. But the issue is, and it's a constitutional issue, you can't just put someone on an island for the rest of their life. You can't do that. And so there has to be an avenue for them to go back into society. And so there have been these transfers of sexually violent predators off McNeil Island into less secure facilities in a neighborhood near you. We saw this fight in Enumclaw, where a sexually violent predator was placed in this house close to a kid's bus stop. We saw the fight in Tenino, where parents successfully pushed back against one of these LRAs, these community facilities run by a private entity for these violent predators to be housed at. So at the end of the legislative session, all of this was just starting to come up. Representatives Travis Couture and Dan Griffey, both Republicans in the Tenino area, they were trying like hell to get lawmakers to do a couple things. Improve community notification, because these communities were blindsided. You can't do that. You can't put the worst of the worst sex offenders next door to families and not give them enough notice. They were also trying to just put a moratorium on the release of these violent sex offenders from McNeil Island until this program could get a second look. And I think that's common sense as well. So this stuff didn't go anywhere. I think it just came up too late in the legislative session last year. However, Representative Travis Couture and his colleagues on the right and the left took this issue very seriously over the summer. They went to McNeil Island. They talked to the stakeholders, and they got together, some common sense Republicans and Democrats. They've crafted a number of proposals that they are going to put forth in the upcoming legislative session, again, on a bipartisan basis, which is wonderful because this is a common sense issue. Representative Travis Couture was nice enough to come on the show and talk to us about what they're working on. Representative Travis Couture, welcome back to Undivided.
Thanks for having me on, Brandi.
Yeah, this is an issue we've talked with you quite a bit about, but it kind of came up later in the legislative session last year, and we didn't see a whole lot get done on it. Do you feel like, though, those conversations have set you up to be able to actually put something through this session?
Yeah, if you'll recall, one of the bills myself and my seatmate, Representative Dan Griffey, tried to push was, doing a moratorium or a pause on the whole system so that we can establish a work group to fix some of these loopholes and better promote public safety. Well, we didn't get a hearing for that. We were dropping it kind of late in the session, but there was a lot of action and support for that idea. And so even though we didn't pass the bill, we essentially, over the interim in the summer, we conducted our own little work group with the state agencies and people from the other side and everywhere else, counties, so that we can try to, draft a bill that is well worked and fixes a lot of those loopholes. And I think that we're getting really close to accomplishing that right now.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like to hear is that you've worked with the other side on this, because that's going to be necessary to get something done. I know one of the things that you did is you actually went out to McNeil Island, where the sexually violent predators are housed. You had Democrats there, including Representative Maury Leavitt, and she's now on a bill with you. And this, to me, is the most common sense one, which would improve public notice for the release of these offenders. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails?
Yeah, so there's essentially three pieces, three SVP bills having to do with LRAs and public notice and everything else that we're pushing. And so myself and Rep. Leavitt, we were at McNeil Island together, and we had a lot of different conversations about different things that we can do. And public notice came up as something that we have to get across the line. We have to be able to work with our communities and not hide what the government is doing from them. And we have to make sure that when we give that public notice, that they have all the information about how the system works. And as you recall, back in my district in Tenino, that caused a huge stir because there just wasn't any public notice. So that bill isn't pre-filed and dropped quite yet, but we're very close. We're basically tying the bow on top of that Christmas present right now. But yeah, really happy to work with Rep. Levitt. She's been a good partner in this. And then we also dropped, I already pre-filed one of the three bills, House Bill 1926. And that has Rep. Levitt and Rep. Dolio as co-sponsors as well, with Rep. Griffey joining here pretty soon. And that bill is good. That has the Attorney General's office support as well. And that bill will ensure that as sexually violent predators don't collect DOC supervision credits while in the LRA, because what would happen is they would get released later after having collected all these credits, and then there would be no DOC supervision for those people. So we're basically saying, hey, while you're in the LRA, you cannot collect those credits. And the effect of that is that there'd be more supervision time. It's lengthier for those people after the LRA. And that's going to help promote public safety.
Yeah, on the one that I said is common sense, this public notice aspect. You've got a Democrat who's leading that bill. You're supporting it. At the same time, though, you remember what Governor Jay Inslee said at the end of last legislative session. He called it unduly burdensome, the kind of notice that you guys wanted for some of these communities like Tenino. So can you get something like that past the governor?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, DSHS is basically under the umbrella of the governor. And I can't, predict the future and say for certain that he won't veto it again. But all I can do is work with the other side, his party, work with his state agency, find a consensus, and then put something together. One of the promising things is that we've been promised hearings on all three of these bills. Chair Goodman, Representative Roger Goodman. So we've been working with him as well to make sure that we have hearings for these things and give them the best chance of passage. That's something that we struggled with previously, but having gone through the process of working with all the different stakeholders, the counties, the agencies, the Attorney General's office, and even Democrats from the House, and including Representative Goodman, we've got to a place where everyone now feels comfortable hearing and pushing forward these bills. So that's very promising. And I think everyone understands that, last session, we were really up against a clock. And now that we've put in a lot of work over the summer to work these bills and promote public safety, everyone thinks that we have to do something this session to move the needle across the finish line. So very happy that we're going to get hearings on it. And that's good for me, because I want my constituents to be able to have a voice in Olympia on this matter. And not just my constituents, but people up in Enumclaw or other places as well, or even Rep. Levitt's district. And so we've had a very bipartisan effort on this. Everyone understands the task. The agencies have been helpful. We're clearing some final language hurdles right now on the public notice bill, and then the bigger fixing the loopholes bill. And the way we've done this, even though it started with myself and Dan Griffey really putting together the work group, but then we looped in people like Rep. Levitt, right? And we decided the best way to move all three of these bills strategically was to make sure that we all had a piece of the pie. And so that's why you'll see me being the prime sponsor of one, Dan Griffey being the prime sponsor of another, and Rep. Levitt being the prime sponsor of one. And I think that's kind of what's missing today. You got to be able to work together and stop screaming from the fringes in order to get good things done. And I know some people don't like that in today's day and age, but that's good, effective governance.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the thought and the work, obviously, that went into this to get to this point, because when you're the minority party, you can try to propose things in a silo, but the reality that you have to deal with is that you need Democrats in order to push this legislation forward. And so I'm really happy to see the work that you guys put into this, the Democrats who are on board, Roger Goodman in the Public Safety Committee. And I know there's a lot of communities who have been fighting this fight that are going to be very grateful if these things can make it across the finish line.